is a flagship public engagement initiative of the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning designed to bring government closer to the people by making public financial management, economic governance, and national development issues accessible, transparent, and easy to understand. Every Thursday from 6 to 6:55 on ELBC Radio and across the ministry's digital platforms will provide exclusive insights into the national budget, domestic revenue generation, development planning, debt management, public investment, or major government initiatives shaping Liberia's future. I'm your host, Mohammed Melvin Quena. A little later, we'll have our co-host, Caroline Myers, joining us. This evening, we turn our spotlight on one of the most important pillars of national governance, the national budget preparation process. Before a single dollar is allocated and before the president submits the national budget to the legislature by October 31 every year, an extensive, highly coordinated process unfolds behind the scenes. That process is led by the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning and serves as the foundation for translating the arrest agenda for inclusive development into action. Joining us as our live studio guest today will be the Assistant Minister for Budget, Madam Sarah McGill Mulbah, who will a little later provide an in-depth look at the budget preparation process and the strategic considerations shaping Liberia's government spending plans for the year ahead. For decades, media institutions across Liberia provided critical services to government agencies, often waiting for payments that remained outstanding across successive administrations. Today, that narrative is changing. Under the current government of President Joseph Boakai, the government of Liberia has begun addressing these long-standing obligations as part of the broader commitment to pay national and international debts. We'll hear from Mr. Bob Best, Vice President of the Publishers Association of Liberia and the Managing Director of the Liberia Observer Corporation, as he reflects on the government's efforts to settle verified media debts and strengthen confidence between the state and the press. Also ahead of today's edition is the MFDP Week in Review, bringing you the latest developments from the ministry. Stay with us. We'll be right back right here on the program. Thanks for staying with us on the MFDP Hour. We encourage you to invite a friend to join you as we explore the work, priorities, and impacts of the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. This program is also streaming live on the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning's Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn pages and on Eden TV, allowing Liberians at home and abroad to stay informed and engaged. Every week, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning undertakes critical initiatives aimed at strengthening public financial management, promoting economic growth, improving service delivery, and advancing the government of Liberia's national development agenda. For a comprehensive roundup of the latest activities, achievements, and developments from the ministry, let's now join Alex Bufage with MFDP Week in Review.
Pleasant evening and welcome to MFDP in Review, a summary of some of the initiatives from departments and units. These are the major events from the MFDP for the week. The Office of the Controller and Accountant General at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning has issued a circular to all heads of ministries, agencies, and commissions, calling that all payroll adjustments and corrections be submitted on or before June 17. The growth is intended to ensure the timely processing and disbursement of government salaries ahead of Liberia's Independence Day celebrations on July 26, according to the circular signed by Controller and Accountant General Elwood Nete on June 11. All ministries, agencies, and commissions are required to complete and submit annual payroll-related changes, including salary adjustments, updates, and corrections. By the July 17 deadline, the Controller and Accountant General warned that any institution failing to submit its revised payroll information by the stipulated Sagler further states that the processing of payroll adjustments, updates, and corrections will resume in August 2026. Government institutions are being urged to cooperate fully with the directive as part of broader efforts to strengthen public financial management and improve efficiency in the administration of government payroll. Elements of our bilateral growth for finance and development plans in the African Development Bank have signed the US 16.7 million financing agreement aimed at strengthening fiscal sustainability and improving governance in Liberia's mining sector. Speaking at the signing ceremony on Wednesday, Finance and Development Planning Minister Augustine Kafwan said the program is designed to enhance fiscal sustainability, strengthen public financial management, improve tax administration, and increase transparency and accountability in the money and governance sectors. Minister Kafwan explained that the agreement represents the first phase of a two-year programmatic effort and reflects the African Development Bank's continued support to the government's Aris agenda for inclusive development. He noted that the initiative is focused on strengthening governance, revitalizing the economy, and ensuring that economic growth is more inclusive and impactful. The finance minister praised the African Development Bank for its long-standing partnership with Liberia, emphasizing that the agreement centers on practical reforms, including improved revenue mobilization, strengthened debt management, tightened procurement systems, and reinforced anti-corruption measures. The minister also highlighted several major infrastructure projects financed by the African Development Bank, including the Ganda to Hapo Highway, the Facedown to Hapo Road, and the Kabbalah Bridge. He further referenced the recent signing of an US 18 million agreement aimed at strengthening domestic resource mobilization as part of ongoing fiscal reforms under the administration of President Joseph Mulbah Sr. For its part, African Development Bank Country Manager for Liberia, Rees Wazambela, commended the Liberian government for its commitment to the partnership. He reaffirmed the bank's support, noting that the institution remains fully engaged not only through financing assistance, but also through policy dialogue and technical support to help ensure that government reforms deliver tangible benefits for the Liberian people. Finance and Development Planning Minister Gosling Payne feature. His remarks come as Liberia grapples with a drug crisis, particularly among its youth. One lamented the social toll of addiction, saying Liberian streets are increasingly filled with able-bodied young men walking like zombies, a scene he described as heartbreaking for parents and communities. The minister delivered a stern warning to drug traffickers and dealers, condemning those who profit from the destruction of young lives. The Liberian government has renewed its commitment to placing hundreds of volunteer health workers on the national payroll. Since the inception of President Joseph Mulbah Sr.'s administration, more than 1,500 volunteer health workers have been placed on payroll, but there are many more yet to be enrolled. The issue took center stage Tuesday during a Senate hearing involving officials from the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning and the Ministry of Health. Discussions focused on the long-standing challenges facing volunteer health workers who continue to provide essential healthcare services across Liberia, despite not being fully employed by the government. Appearing before the Senate, Assistant Minister for Budget at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, Sarah McGill Mulbah acknowledged growing frustration over the slow pace of the process and assured lawmakers that the Waka administration remains committed to regularizing volunteer health workers. Mulbah appeared alongside Deputy Minister for Administration, Martha City Morris, and the Deputy Minister for Planning, research and monitoring and evaluation, Anthony Malaya Tamacho at the Ministry of Health, as both institutions outlined ongoing efforts to address one of the health sector's most persistent workforce challenges. During the hearing, Mulbah disclosed that the government has identified approximately US 3.2 million to support the payroll exemption process. However, she cautioned that available funding could not be sufficient to accommodate all volunteers identified through the Civil Service Agency verification process during the current budget cycle. As discussions continue, the Senate committees on Ways, Means, and Funders and Health are expected to maintain oversight while consultations intensify among the MFDP, the Ministry of Health, and the Civil Service Agency. Those are the latest information on the MFDP Week in Review. Thanks for listening.
Alex Bofage with MFDP Week in Review. For many years, media institutions across Liberia provided publication, advertising, and communication services to various government agencies, often without receiving timely payment for work completed. Across successive administrations, these unpaid obligations accumulated into significant arrears, placing considerable financial pressure on media institutions and undermining their ability to sustain operations, compensate employees, and invest in quality journalism. The issue became a long-standing concern within Liberia's media landscape, prompting repeated appeals for government to honor its contractual obligations and strengthen its relationship with the media. Under the current administration, the government of Liberia has taken decisive steps to address this challenge. Through the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, the government has commenced the settlement of verified media debts inherited from previous administrations, following a thorough review and validation process conducted by the GAC. Finance and Development Planning Minister Augustine Kpei Ngafua has consistently emphasized that the government has both a moral obligation and a legal responsibility to settle legitimate debts owed to media institutions and other service providers who have rendered valuable services to the Liberian people. Daniel Yankuna recently sat down with the Vice President of the Publishers Association of Liberia and the Managing Director of the Liberia Observer Corporation, Mr. Barbest.
Well, coming to you also as the Vice President for the Publishers Association of Liberia. We are the umbrella leadership for all newspapers. We're an entity that exists to pursue the business interests of newspapers. And so my answer is not just on behalf of the Observer itself, but on behalf of many newspapers. And other newspaper publishers will also give their own personal views. But the MFDP has done well for us, responding intently and speedily to our plight. It hasn't been incredibly perfect, and nothing can be perfect because but the main thing is that when you're trying, when you're making the efforts, and the efforts are visible and they're tangible, you can rest assured that the relationship between the media and the governments can be much more cordial and professional. When we put forth our position to the minister, he really paid attention, and we finally got the first payment in January. The second payment came in June, and that cleared out most of the smaller debts among newspapers. And then there are some of us who still have more sizable accounts to settle. And we've received promises that those will be cleared completely very soon. So, it's remarkable. We appreciate that the government as a whole can allow us to be in a space where we can do our business without fear or favor. We're not saying that government should give anybody any special treatment or castigate or discriminate against other people depending on their environment. We all need to be in a space where we can operate professionally and support each other, support the government where necessary. They can support us where necessary. We're not saying that we have to be dependent or that the government must give us subsidies or anything like that. No, we are independent newspapers, and government operates according to its own laws and mandates. But there still has to be that relationship because the common goal is national development. So how has this payment to newspapers, generally the media, help you at this time? Well, when people owe you money, there's plenty of things behind it. You know, you got debt you got to pay, you got staff that depending on you and their families. You have we have other investments that we need to make to improve our businesses. And so when these debts are outstanding for so long, it cripples, and not just cycles, but it cripples the media. The media doesn't want to be in a position of sustainability. And to an extent, sometimes I am glad that a lot of donor support have left because it will force the media now to focus on itself as a business and to pursue profitability, not just sustainability. You know, so but it's good that we're starting at this point where the debts are being paid. We wish that they would be paid sooner and perhaps larger amounts, but we understand the situation and sometimes the same way how you gotta do payment plan with a bank, the government has to do payment plan with us, and that's what's existing now. Um, but yeah, covering debts, taking care of our staff, and then also reinvesting in our businesses so that we can future proof our journalism.
Well, he is the vice president of the Publishers Association of Liberia and managing director of the Liberia Observer Corporation, publisher of the Daily Observer newspaper, Mr. Barbeste, in conversation with Daniel Yankona. My co-host is joining me in studios now, Madam Caroline Myers. Caroline, good evening. Welcome. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I'm okay. And let me say good evening to all our listeners and our viewers.
Okay, so our guest is also here. Let's welcome the Assistant Minister for Budget at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, Honorable Sarah McGill Mulbah. Madam Mulbah, welcome. How are you today?
I'm fine, and thank you, Mommy, for hosting me today, and to the LBS family for hosting me today in their studio to provide information on the government budget process. I'm glad to be here.
Okay,
All right. So, as you are aware,
sorry.
yeah,
Trying to get her headphone right. Okay.
technology. Well, the national budget is what the government uses to deliver its development objectives or priorities. Whether the government intends to build roads, if the government wants to build hospital, wants to improve education and access to healthcare, everything happens through the budget. And that what makes the budget a very important government document. It goes through a cycle of 4 stages, beginning with the preparation, the approval, the execution, and then the auditing, the final accounts of the budget process. And so our conversation today is focused on the first stage of the budget cycle. That is the preparation stage. And like Mohammed have said, the assistant minister is here to provide us more insight on what that preparation is all about. The PFM law, that is the law that governs how the government manages public resources, requires the president to submit a draft budget to the national legislature on or before October 31. But before the president submits that budget, there is a rigorous and intensive coordinated process that unfolds behind the scene. And that process is led by the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. And so it is that process that we're going to talk about today. Madam Minister, so to start the ball rolling, can you just tell the public what is this budget preparation process? What is it?
So thank you, Caroline, for that question. And before I go to the budget preparation process, discussing the budget preparation process, it's important for us to lay the premise about the development plan of the country, because it's that plan against which the budget is developed. So the process is an ordinary process like we do in our homes. When you have money, you want to plan what to spend on with the competing priorities. It's about decision making. And you must have something in mind that you want to spend against before funds are aligned. So in 2020 or 2024, when this government took over, there was a process led by the Ministry of Finance through which there was a nationwide stakeholders consultation to actually understand what are the gaps, what are the challenges that citizens are faced with, and how can government address some of the challenges in the time frame of the government, which is for 6 years. And that process was led by the Ministry of Finance through the planning division, where we went across the 15 counties, had consultation with local stakeholders, including women groups, youth groups, persons with disabilities, and county stakeholders. And through that process, we were able to develop as a government our national agenda, which is called the AAID. And not only the AAID was developed through that process, but we also developed the 15 counties development agenda. And that agenda now serves as the framework that we use at the Ministry of Finance and all other spending entities to roll out or implement programs that will impact the lives of citizens and also boost the economy of the country. So with that structure or with that policy already in place, what means do you use to finance the plan that has been developed? It's only done through the process of budgeting, aligning resources to the plans that has already been developed. And that process is not a one-stop shop thing. It's a cycle that we go through. So the first step is that we developed at the Ministry of Finance what we call the budget calendar. And that calendar, the objective of that calendar is to highlight major activities that needs to be undertaken by different stakeholders within the ministry and also the spending entities and timelines to achieve the activities leading towards the development of the budget. And that calendar is normally published on the ministry website and other social platforms that we have to inform even external stakeholders like civil society organizations that work along with us to go through step by step and to know exactly where we are with the development of the budget. And once that calendar is published, the first activity we undertake there is to convene what is considered as the sector working group engagement. And in that context, we work along with entities that have similar functions. We group them is the structure which government operates, sector. And in that sector working group, you have what you call a convener, you have what you call co-conveners, and normally you have civil society part of that working group, you have line ministries and agencies, you have donor partners part of that sector working group. And in that process of the sector working group engagements is where you have institutions now explaining what are their plans that is aligned to the development plan that has already been done, what they intend to do for that fiscal year. You also have donor partners in that meeting expressing some of their plan activities within the sector as well. And most times the sector is being led by the government institution that has the oversight responsibility. So for instance, if you call sector working group meeting for education, the Ministry of Education now serves as the sector lead and is now called or facilitated by the donor community that has a lot of support for programs in that sector. And we also have, as part of that engagement, the civil society, like I said, during the budget process, we are unable to bring all of the citizens to come to provide their inputs to the process at the time. But what we normally do is I work with civil society groups that are involved in the sector's activity to come also to provide information about what is needed at the time because they are more close to the citizens. So it's through that process, the Ministry of Finance will develop and assign to the spending entities what we call the budget policy note. It's a template.
Okay, what does that budget policy note seek to achieve?
Okay. So the budget policy note is a template to guide the spending entities on how to plan their budget. It also asks for information for prior year, what was received, what was achieved, what are the things that are still outstanding that has not been completed, are there new programs or priorities that they want to bring on, what's the cost implication, is there support from donor. They're going to disclose all of those using the budget policy note. And in that policy note also, they provide information about time frame that they expect to implement those programs and costs attached. So for instance, we all know that the budget process is an annual process and we don't have the money one time to spend all. So in that policy note, it's going to tell us for the first quarter, these are activities that we want to undertake, and these are the costs aligned to those activities. So it's a preliminary information we get from them setting a priority for the fiscal year. And all of the policy notes are now consolidated by the Ministry of Finance. Then when you see the inputs from spending entities, genuine things they want to do with cost aligned is where we come in now to look at the costs, look at the activities that are outlined, and now assess the available resources that we have.
And all of those programs that they want to do, everything and they are linked to the national development.
Yes, they are linked to the National Development Plan. And not only the National Development Plan, when you look at the plan, as part of the strategic phase, they've also developed what we call the sector strategy. And the sector strategy leads to the entity strategy as well. Because every spending entity is required to develop their strategic plan that lay out the roadmap on how they intend to achieve things that are outlined in the national plan that are aligned to their institution.
Okay. So the ministries, agencies, and commissions present their plans to you, their concept notes and everything. How do you ensure that those expenditure plans are realistic? That what they put there is exactly what they want to happen.
Okay, so when the plans are submitted to the Ministry of Finance, we also do what we call recurring cost analysis. And in our analysis, we try to understand what are some of the things that they have achieved in the prior year that they are asking for now, asking for the same thing that are not needed in the upcoming year. So let's say, for instance, if you have one institution like for 2026, we budgeted for them to purchase vehicle or so for maybe 4 deputies in the institution. And we are now in the process of developing the 2027 budget, and they submit a proposal for 4 vehicles for the same 4 deputies, knowing that vehicle has a lifespan, it's a fixed asset, it has a long-term lifespan. It's something that we're going to work along with them to say for this 2026, we budgeted and we procured 4 vehicles for the deputies. So considering that his vehicle is not only 1 year, we either realign what they are asking for to other activities, or we adjust their budget by that amount to be able to reprioritize other programs, either with the same entity or with different institutions. So we also do what we call the budget costing template. It's a template that we develop and we give to spending entities during the preparation of the budget as well, wherein commodities like basic goods and services that are procured, they populate that template and provide to us baseline costing about what the cost might be. Because the budget process is not a new process. Yeah, it's a process that they have gone through several times and they have some preliminary idea. And we at the Ministry of Finance also, we have ideas on basic commodities are normally procured by government. So for instance, if you are to procure vehicle or fuel for operations for your institution, we all know the price of fuel on the Liberian market. So an institution cannot tell us they're going to buy fuel $10 per gallon, and another institution tell us we're going to buy fuel $6 per gallon. Now we do the cost analysis in between to work along with the other institution to say no, this is not allowed. You cannot buy fuel because the market value for fuel is this. So we give them the costing templates and they populate that and send to the Ministry of Finance too. And the planning division work along with them in analyzing all of those templates and data that come from the spending entities.
So after that process that starts from the sector working group and then they populate all of the templates, what next?
So what next is that we now consolidate all of the information that comes from the spending entities to know what's the actual budgetary need for that fiscal year. Once that is done, we now work with the revenue authority and the fiscal affair. So now at this point, it's mid-year of the current fiscal year. So like now, we already in June, and that process will soon commence. So once we get the data from the spending entities, the fiscal affairs working along with LRA, they try to do the revenue forecast for the period to know, based on the trade activities, based on all of the different interventions, what is it that is realistic that the government will generate during 2026, 2027. But considering the timeline, the analysis are done, they gave us a preliminary number to inform our decision. So that preliminary number, based on the expenditure pressure that have come from the sector working group, we issued what is called BCC, the first budget cost circular, using the indicative number that comes from fiscal affairs and the revenue. In that first budget cost circular, we send out to spending entities and we provide information to them what their ceilings will be. The indicative, we call that indicative ceiling because there's a second ceiling that normally goes out.
What is that indicative ceiling for the ordinary person who's out there? When you say indicative ceiling, what do you mean?
When we say indicative ceiling, we're talking about amounts that we give to spending entities for them to play in at the early stage because the number we're giving them has not been confirmed. So it's an early amount that
But
we give.
why you not calling up minister? Why you don't use the numbers that they gave you? You ask them to give you number to give you the plan. Why you don't use their numbers that they gave you? Because it's also important to tell the public why you don't use the numbers that they give you.
We don't use the number that they give because of the issue of limited resources. So if you have submission from spending entities combined, maybe in the tune of 2 billion, 3 billion, and the projection as coming is lower than the expenditure, now you have to prioritize to fit in the available resources, because as a government, we run what is considered as a cash-based budgeting. You only spend what you have. You cannot obligate government over a period for funds that you don't have as a spending entity. So now, based on what is projected that we could get at the end of the period, is against that, we try to align our priorities.
So how do you balance computing demands and making sure that those critical sectors are adequately funded? That's where the problem comes in. People say, "Oh, Ministry of Finance, I send my plan to you for 200 million and you give me 50 million." How do you do it as technicians?
So, I have this joke. The former president, he tried to describe the issue of scarcity, and he talked about, when there's a scarcity and right now, you should do something, and we all laughed about it. But the issue of scarcity is a reality, and it's something that will always not have sufficient to respond to our needs. People thought that when the government reached 1 billion, it was going to be enough for us to address all of the challenges we have. So there where the strategy comes in as good budgeter, competing with priority in the midst of scarcity. So what we do is that we work along the economic management team. Maybe Minister Yampa is here, he could chip in on that. We have to align funds to area that's per group. We have to align money to area that improve the lives of the ordinary Liberians. We have to align funds to area that promote livelihood for Liberians. Because everything we do is about the people. It's to take them from one point of their life and to improve it at another point. So what we do is that if we put funds to program that will firstly spread economic growth, that will be able to get more money, area that will improve the life, area that will have access, and area that will also enhance the human capacity.
So that's where the strategic priority
Comes
comes
in.
Yes, the strategic priority.
So most time, they say, the president talking about role. He said role number 1, role number 2, role number 3. When you look at the agenda, we have agriculture, we have roles. So it's where we say, if you put money to role, what is role unlocking? When you put money to role, you have people having access to health care. If you put money to roles,
it improves
it improves
agriculture.
agriculture. If you put money to role, you see the country opening up, it improves transportation, improves trade. So you want to intervene somewhere that have the multi-sectorial or dimension and that can improve things once that thing is done. So you see government now trying to align resources to role. We're talking about education, human capacity. It's a crucial point for this government. And we also talk about the issue of agriculture, food security, because the president is big on that we have to be food sufficient, we have to feed ourselves. And those are things that we consider when we are selecting priorities that limited resources should be aligned to.
You were talking something about the revenue projection, and I think it's important that our people get to understand, because most times people think the money is sitting somewhere and we just, as a government, we are allocating the resources. But you started to talk about the projection that comes from the LRE along with fiscal affairs. Maybe we need to throw some light on that, because maybe people will think it's money sitting there somewhere, but based on, like you said, we are in the middle of the year, and it is what LRE is raising as LRE is collecting the money before we can be able to allocate those resources.
Yeah, so firstly, before we talk about the different revenue, let me first thank our taxpayers in the country.
Yes.
Currently, we have a $1.3 billion budget, and we can proudly say From that $1.3 billion, we have almost 1 billion.
1.2 billion.
Yes,
That is coming from domestic.
yes, that is coming from domestic revenue. In as much as we would like external support, but we think Liberia is taking ownership of our own economy, and we want to thank all taxpayers out there who are contributing to this achievement. The issue about raising government revenue, as Caroline said, is not something that comes all at once. The process is done, and over time, as taxpayers pay their money, is how revenues are generated. Government, we don't have bulk money sitting somewhere. Once the budget is passed, we go there and take the money to start executing. No. It's about the number of trade that is taking place, the number of income that people generating when they have to pay income taxes, and all of those different commercial activities.
Okay, so we know time is fast spent, and I know a lot of people want to know how does civil society and citizens come in, especially when we talk about transparency and we talk about the budget preparation process. What role civil society and citizens play?
Civil society, they are a key stakeholders in the government budgeting process.
Okay.
And it's important that we work with them from the inception of everything that we do.
Yeah.
Because most time, in as much as you're going to tell your own story, but you need a neutral voice to amplify some of the things that you do. And the only way they are able to amplify is they have to be informed, they have to be aware, and they have to follow through the process. So the first thing from the strategic phase of the budget process, as I stated earlier, we do work with civil society in aligning priorities to the budget. We even have what we call the fiscal advisory group.
Yes, that's the fiscal transparency.
Fiscal transparency advisory group that we work with, comprising of various civil society institutions. We conduct what we call open budget initiative, where we go out working with civil society to communicate what we've achieved, and they also tell us some of the areas that we should intervene. So they are a critical part of the budget process, working closely with us to translate what is it that the people want, and also to communicate to the people steps that government is taking to respond to some of the things that they brought home that they want to see government working on.
Okay, so we talk about the sector working through which one part of the strategic phase. We went on to the operational phase, taking and allocating the resources. Just drill up briefly from that point up to the point we submit the budget for the legislature.
So I start to where we issue the call circular, and once that first call circular is done, somewhere around August, we now work along with the revenue and the fiscal affair, where they provide to us the final revenue projection for the fiscal year. And that projection now, we communicate to the spending entities and conduct what we call executive budget hearings. Because in that hearing, they now come.
Where do you conduct those hearings? At the legislature or at the Ministry of Finance?
No, at the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
The hearing is conducted at the Ministry of Finance, and we have stakeholders that form part of what we consider as the National Budget Committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a committee that is established, so that hearing is not only conducted by the Ministry of Finance. We have representatives from state, we have representatives from civil servants, we have representatives from GSA, which is the General Service Agency, we have representatives from the Public Procurement and Concession Commission. They all come in to form part of that committee, including Liberia Revenue Authority. They form part of that committee, and it's there we try to work with spending entities to say, hey, what is it and you actually need. Remember, we've given them the first ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
At the inception, they submitted to us a long laundry list through the sector working group of things that they wanted to achieve. We are unable to give them the full amount they've asked for. The final ceiling has been provided by both revenue and fiscal affairs. So now we're conducting a hearing with them to say, based on the ceiling, we still see you have gap. What is it exactly that you want to do? So they come and provide to us additional information on why things that they want to do, they are important and why we should finalize them. So it's from that process now, we issue what we call the second budget cost circular with the final ceiling. And
That's what we communicate with the entities now. So, for example, Ministry of Finance, you have 27 million
yes,
to operate with for the next
for the
fiscal year.
next fiscal year. And that final ceiling is communicated to the spending entities. They now go back and develop their final budget based on what is available for them to spend. Once they develop that, it's resubmitted to the Ministry of Finance, and now we consolidate everything. We put it in what we consider now as the budget. It goes to cabinet for discussion and approval. Once cabinet reviews that, they approves it, the president signs it, and now submits to the national legislature.
Good. National budget preparation process made simple here by the Assistant Minister for Budget. If you just joined us, you're listening to the MFDP Hour on ELBC. Our guest in studio tonight is the Honorable Assistant Minister for Budget, Madam Sarah McGill Mulbah, providing important insights on the fiscal year, the budget preparation process and other things that happen around that. We will now open the phone lines for you to join us for a few minutes. 0775 677 376, 0775 677 376, or 0880 514 096, 0775 677 376, or 0880 514 096 are the two numbers. Maybe you have some questions for the Assistant Minister this evening, or you want to make a contribution. 0775 677 376, or 0880 514 096. Let's go to the line and pick up this first caller. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Your name and where you calling from? Please go ahead.
I'm the recruiter that calls from Tuesday the other day.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Shake up a little. We're finding it a little difficult to get you, please. Hello. Sorry, 0880 514 096, 0775 677 376. We don't have luxury of time, so if you're calling, you do it now. 0775 677 376. Let me go to this line. Good evening.
yes, good evening,
Good evening. Go ahead. Students, please go ahead. In a few seconds, please.
Yeah, so I just want to commend the minister for her presentation that she has done a good kind of work. Line the process,
Thank you so much. Let's go to this line. Good evening. Go ahead. Go ahead, please. Have you been following the program, Chief? Okay, thank you. Thank you. 088 0514 096 0775 677 376. We can take one more caller and then we wrap things up on the program. 0775677376, 08005140960. This final call. Good evening. Go ahead. Good evening. Please go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead for Ball County.
We elected, which led to a woman. So we not living in the rural area now. Everyone on go up with the system of government.
Okay.
So if they put it push out or the push out of the individual from that, for to appreciate that, so go to the planet.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So that would do it for the lines. Minister, you can respond to the caller and then we wrap things up.
Yeah, so I think his question was like we were talking about recurrent cost analysis. So I think his question is around whether we have repeated items in the budget and what do we do at the Ministry of Finance. So for example, if we have NICO last year and we still see this NICO this year, yes, I think that's what you to provide more clarity on what we do with those kind of situations.
So let me provide some clarity first on the issue of a recurrent
Mhm.
before we come to what we do. Most time we hear outside people say government is spending a lot of money on recurrent activity. Government is spending a lot of money on recurrent activity. And as part of our outreach in my giving, I made that clear to the students. It's very simple. There are activities that will be recurrent. When you say recurrent, it means it will happen every year because government has to operate. If you have people working for you, you have seven working for you, and you say you'll pay them 1 year and you don't pay them the other year because that cost was budgeted last year and this year you can't budget for it. That's not how government works.
Or
So,
even when you build a hospital and the hospital
yes,
operating.
if you build a hospital, the hospital operating, you have a lot of inflow of patients, you will have recurring costs.
Okay. Yeah. We will conclude because the EFBC guys are chasing us already.
So the issue of a recurring cost is what keeps the government operational,
Okay.
what keeps the government running.
Okay.
So it's something that we as Liberians we should embrace because once you see the government expanding, the issue of a recurring cost is going to expand as well.
Okay. Minister Sarah McGill Mulbah, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's been a very good presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Caroline, for hosting me today.
Okay.
Thank you
Aaron,
so
thank you
much.
too.
Yes, Mohammed, thank you. And it's always a pleasure to be on the MFDP Hour.
No, so as we bring you this edition of the MFDP Hour to a close, we extend our sincere gratitude to our listeners across Liberia and around the world who join us for another informative and engaging discussion. We trust that today's conversation has provided valuable insights into the budget preparation process and the important work being undertaken there at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning to promote transparency, accountability, and national development. Join us next Thursday at 6 p.m. for a brand new presentation of the program with Ben Mohammed, Melvin Quina, and Caroline Myers. On behalf of the entire production team, thank you for listening. Have a good night. Bye-bye.